why are you doing that? Or why aren't you working? To how can I help you? How can I make this better? How can we work together to get past this? Even if it were a behavior issue, if someone was spiking up with aggressive behavior in the classroom, instead of saying, you can't do that or that's not allowed here, the first approach might be coming up with a word where, again, we're going to communicate togetherness, because that's how we get kids to start feeling safe, is by connecting with a safe adult. So coming up with words to say, man, I can see things aren't going well, so what can I do to help you right now?
Fear isn't always equal too, and like you were talking about delaying that response. When you mention derailing your class, and you've got this kid who's got trauma, and they stand up and tell you,
listen,
yes,
things like dirty words,
yes, or tell you to get lost in language
in
that is
colorful terms.
Yes, thank you. Your reaction. You've also got 28, 30 other kids in the room that are like, looking at you. Yeah, what are you gonna do? And it's not about necessarily the other kids. They're still watching. What are you going to tolerate and stuff? Is there any shred of wisdom that you can give teachers that maybe do worry about, when you handle those types of situations?
I think it's just reframing what that looks like, instead of it being I'm under the watch and they're watching to see what I'm going to do. They are, but they're learning from it too.
Sure.
All 25, 30 kids in that classroom get to learn from watching what it looks like for an emotionally regulated adult to show a dysregulated child respect and grace. Kids understand right from wrong. What they don't always know how to do or know what it looks like is to see, how does somebody stay level under duress? How does somebody stay calm when things aren't going well? How does a healthy adult maintain positivity through adversity? So when you're confronting that child in that situation and you feel like you've got the 25 eyes on you, you do, but they're not watching you to feel embarrassed or to feel ashamed or whatever. They're watching you to learn. And it's just a perfect learning opportunity to show kids how you can still give respect and still give kindness to somebody who maybe isn't in a good spot at that moment. And then to me, that kind of totally reframes the experience.
So when we think about teachers who are continually showing their students respect and grace, when they're validating and listening, when they're being responsive and not reactive, how does that affect our students long term? How can we really impact our kids in a positive way when we act with trauma in mind?
I don't think it's a stretch to call it life-saving. I really don't. When you look at the research and the studies, and I know everybody's looking up at the ACE research now, and you should, but when you look at that research, it's incredible. Kids who don't develop healthy, structured relationships with adults have shortened lifespans. They have unhealthy outcomes through employment, physical health, mental health. They become more susceptible to suicide, sexually transmitted diseases, drug and alcohol problems, substance abuse issues. So when we can build and establish safe, meaningful attachments and relationships with these kids, I truly think we change their lives. We do change their brain wiring. I mean, you guys said something, I believe, right at the beginning. We know that your brain can develop well into your 20s. And in fact, new research thinks that the brain probably doesn't even really stop developing well into our 40s and 50s. If that's the case, then we can change the wiring and we can reprogram brains. So I think every ounce of exposure that we do creates a positive impact on growth and development. The hard part about it is it's a long game process. You don't rewire someone's brain or their developmental process in a 1 year time span. Even in high school, you have a child for 4 years. You're not always going to get to see the fruits of your labor, but it comes out on the back end when they turn into healthy adults who are able to raise healthy children, and we get to break cycles. That's the other impact. You're not only saving possibly that child's life and future, you're also helping them create new patterns moving forward with their family. So the impact, I think, is almost immeasurable.
So we need to love them today.
Oh, yeah.
So that they can be ready to learn tomorrow.
It's pretty powerful.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Tell us, do you have anybody in mind that you think, man, they, really good models in terms of creating this, safe classroom and trauma-informed practice that you've seen around the district?
Well, I of course, I'm always going to want to brag about the buildings that I worked in most recently, but I think to see it in the smaller version, I think our special programming with Prairie Learning Center and Claire Learning Center, they're doing this at what I would consider a very heightened, masterful level. The difference being there, you don't get to see it in a setting, like in a comprehensive setting where you're dealing with kids with significant trauma in a classroom that also has 75% of the room who don't fit that bill. I wish I knew more names of folks who were doing it in a setting like the one we're in. I do think you guys have done a fantastic job here at West, because when you talk about engaging all kids, we have to be able to get outside of traditional instructional models. Sit and get is not good. When you think about safety, if you just come at kids from one learning angle, you're not going to really address anxiety that kids have about learning. You know, when we talk about safety is not all about physical safety. It's about emotional safety. And if you come into a classroom feeling inadequate about your abilities and inadequate about what you know or what you don't know or your ability to learn, you have to be able to engage some of those kids in a different way. I'm a big fan of project-based and problem-based learning. I think it's just something we need to be doing more, because it allows more flexibility and more individualization to meet every kid's needs and not just the large percentage. I think if you go to our special programmings, you're going to see the act of adults staying regulated against extremely dysregulated kids, and you're going to go, wow. I want to especially brag about the paras in those settings. When you work with those kids and you're kind of on the front lines of keeping kids regulated and de-escalating kids who are already getting dysregulated, those guys just do a fantastic job. So I would tell you, if you're a teacher and you're struggling, I would invite anybody to go out and watch those adults work. Even though the setting's different, I think they model it beautifully. Talk about kids using profane language to watch an adult stay calm and regulated under that pressure, and then be able to match that child's affect and bring them down and get calm. It's a great place.
And teachers are welcome to come observe anytime?
And we do believe that it's an effective approach to working with kids. And I know for me as a district employee, that's one of my goals, is to take those skills and those practices, and we got to make sure we train and empower everybody to be able to utilize those skills no matter what setting you work in.
And for those teachers who are looking to do a little bit more research and a little bit more learning beyond just our discussion today, what are some books, authors, resources, people on Twitter that people could start investigating? Dr.
Bruce Perry is probably my favorite. He's a good follow on Twitter, and his book, A Boy Raised as a Dog, because it does a nice job of blending the clinical world and the education world. Heather Forbes' book, The Help for Billy, is great, because Heather Forbes' book really, really focuses on practices in school. On Twitter, there's a lot of good followers on Twitter, and I think following practitioners, following people that are working in the classroom, I think that's great. I mean, you can follow the professionals and the authors, but I know I still remember it's nice to hear from the folks that are putting practice into play in the classroom, and I think there's all kinds of great teachers and principals out there.
And speaking of Twitter, Dr. LaFoon, what is your Twitter handle?
You would ask me that. No, I think I actually do not. It's at John LaFoon 17.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on the Olathe Spark Starters podcast. We're excited to talk to you, and we've learned a lot today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And now it's time for a new segment called the Spark Starter Spotlight, where we give a shout out to those amazing Spark Starters from across the district. Our first one is Kristen Howell. She is a first grade teacher at Indian Creek Elementary. She was nominated by Chelsea Harris for always trying and sharing new technology. She is an innovator. Another Spark Starter in the district is Casey Johnson. Casey is an ELL language arts teacher at Indian Trail Middle School. She was nominated by Taylor Rabel for being a sunshine spreader. Both of these teachers are rock stars in the classroom, and they are spreading the joy of teaching to everyone around them. If you have someone who is like that in your life right now, at your building, let us know about it. Send in those Spark Starters so we can recognize them on the podcast. This episode also had a section that talked about teacher self-care. And we want to hear from you. What are some of the ways you use teacher self-care in the classroom? How do you make sure you're the best version of yourself for your students and colleagues? Let us know about it by emailing us at olathesparkstarters@gmail.com. Have a great week.